Welcome everybody to today's webinar. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules and our eyes off whatever's happening in the U.S. Days of Our Lives episode of today. So I'm going to facilitate some discussion today, and I've been lucky enough to have three leading experts in the field: Janice Weiss, Director of Recognition and Engagement from Macy's; Zachary Lipner, Vice President, Chief Human Resource Officer from Newark Beth Israel; and Leah Lippert-Colburn, Director Human Resources from TIAA, who volunteered, I had to twist their arm a little bit, their time today to share some of their knowledge, expertise, and understanding. And the objectives for today is really to allow us and these executives to share some of their knowledge and expertise on some of the unique challenges of their particular industries, one from retail, one from healthcare, one from professional/financial services, and share how they have approached this question and challenge of how do you leverage recognition as a tool with a view to driving employee engagement, and how the circumstances for which they face in their industries and businesses have influenced what they ultimately decided to do. So, brief introductions to each of them. Myself, I am the CEO and one of the founders of Online Rewards, and have been involved in a large number of educational programs with HCI and others. The company was started in 2002, and over the last 16, 17 years, we've now deployed some 400 programs, helping clients with their reward recognition engagement strategies. Joining us today is Janice Weiss, Director of Recognition and Engagement Marketing at Macy's. I have had the pleasure of working with Janice for over a decade. Background, law degree from the University of Pennsylvania, 15 years in consumer product marketing and management with companies such as P&G, Bristol Myers. If you're looking for some interesting cookies, I'm not sure if she's still running the Yucky Cookie Company. Currently, Janice oversees all the engagement employee recognition initiatives at Macy's. Zach Lipner, who I've also had the pleasure of working with for some 7-8 years, background in industrial and labor relations, has a background working with Aramark, joined Newark Beth Israel in 1987, currently is the Vice President of HR for Newark Beth Israel. And Leah Lippert-Colburn, background Masters in HR and Communications, has worked with Air France prior to joining TIAA, has been responsible for the design, development, execution of their reward and recognition program, and is now responsible for all of TIAA HR policies. So as a brief agenda, I'm going to just put the conversation into context, the big E. Then I'm going to turn it over to the panel, and they're going to provide some background and perspective on what's the history of reward and recognition at their company, what are they tactically doing in terms of execution to try and address and drive engagement through reward and recognition, and what are their observations in terms of, as a result of their work, what have they seen happen and where are they seeing things into the future. And subject to, we'll hopefully have some time at the end to answer questions and give you all the opportunity to direct some questions straight to them. If we're not able to do it all during the session today, however, Holly from HCI will collect the information so you can have an opportunity to direct questions to any of them specifically. But hopefully we'll have enough time to cover all of them. So first question. Everything's engagement. You've got to be engaged in everything you do. Right? You've got to be engaged as an employee. You've got to be consumer engaged. Right? In the old days, I thought it used to be this, and then if you did that and you got the right one, you might get to that, which for all of us, there you go. Everybody hasn't seen that photo before. I don't see it too often. It's Mr. and Mrs. Levy. However, in an earlier stage in life, at least for me, I thought this was the vehicle to drive that kind of engagement, and that was in working in retail as a store packer for many years, and I thought it was all about the cheese. However, evidently, it's not really about that, or our vernacular has improved, or we've run out of words, and now we're using this word, and that is what we're really seeing now is we've sort of moved beyond pay, right? And what does that really mean, we've moved beyond pay? Well, everybody on this call had an opportunity when they woke up and headed to work to decide if they were going to give no effort whatsoever and spend the day looking for alternative jobs, wondering what they were doing there and why they don't like where they're at, or the alternative, looking forward to coming to work and giving the best that they possibly could. So historically, one would have thought that the amount of pay that we were given, or the opportunity for incremental pay, was the big driver and determinant as to where one would sit between those two extremes of I'm not interested at all to I'm highly interested. But, and again, this might not necessarily be a global statement, but in the U.S., and according to this PricewaterhouseCoopers study, what we're seeing is people are not necessarily thinking about pay on their way to work. In fact, none of us were really thinking about what our paycheck was, but we certainly all had perceptions on whether we looked forward to going to work, whether we were excited, whether we were engaged, whether we enjoyed the relationships with our peers, whether we enjoyed the relationship with our manager. And so herein is the crux of what we're talking about today, which is we know compensation is a tool, but it's far from the only tool, and we've probably reached a stage in the evolution of businesses in the U.S. where we can begin to challenge ourselves with how do we drive better employee engagement or satisfaction through alternative types of vehicles or levers than pay and compensation and benefits, and thus the question of recognition and the role of recognition as a way to drive engagement. We all know that culture is king, and that 95% of organizations state that, the quality of the culture of the organization trumps pay. So let's see what we can do in terms of learn from some executives and leaders as far as what they've done to try and come up with creative approaches and alternatives. According to some of the big consulting firms, Towers Watson says 40% of us are highly engaged, 19% unsupported, 17% detached, 24% disengaged. According to modern surveys, some 14, 15, 16% are engaged. According to Gallup, some 32% are engaged. According to Quantum Work, 65.9% are engaged. I guess it's hard to read exactly all of that and what does it really mean, so that's why we pay the consultants lots of money to tell us what the engagement level really is. But we know that it's important, and we know that it's elevated in terms of board-level objectives and initiatives. They're even using the technology. They're doing surveys. They're looking for an engagement survey result. So it's on the agendas. And according to Burson, $1.53 billion will be spent and invested trying to influence this result. Okay, at a high level, great. At a more tactical execution level, especially for HR leadership, if you've got 1 in 5 employees planning to leave, that's a problem because we all know the cost of that. We know the immediate and hard and direct costs associated with the replacement, the lost productivity, the waste of time, the impact that it has on the rest of the employees within the sphere of those that are leaving. 30% of millennials expected to have a new job in 2016. Okay, so that we can take as definite. Put it in a cumulative and you get to about $11 billion. That number, I'm sure, is higher based on more recent statistics. What we can tell you is not effective motivation or recognition or trying to drive engagement is tactics like this, or a lot of those legacy tactics that still seem to be in place in organizations, and for some reason people can't get rid of them, but we all ultimately know they're not really contributing, but they're there. So rather than me tell you about how to do it, we could look to some real leaders and the Star Trek approach and the Jean-Luc Picard, which is you press a button, you say engage, the ship moves forward and everything's great. All right, so that's usually the CEO kind of vision. Engage them, and they will be engaged. But we all know as HR professionals that's not so easy. It's easy to say it, hard to execute it. Alternatively, you could take the other CEO approach, which has sort of a bit of style, which is just screw it, let's just do it. All right, let's engage them. Branson method. Yep, it's also one that sounds great on the top level, but harder to execute. So why don't I pass it now to some of the clever folks that, again, I've had the pleasure and joy of working with, and let them tell a little bit of their stories in terms of their history of recognition, the link between recognition and engagement, what tactically they've gone and done, and what they've observed in terms of business outcomes. Janice, if you're okay, I'll pass it to you to start us off. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. And I think you're so right. It seems so simple. It really is about getting people to say thank you. It's simple, but it's sort of a combination of art and science, and it's just not that easy because it's making something top of mind that not everybody draws a direct connection between saying thank you and getting productivity, but that's what it's all about. It's this continuous loop about having an engaged workforce so that you can drive sales, and then driving sales so that, that also reinforces the idea of an engaged workforce. So about 7 years ago, we were looking here at Macy's. We had finally unified our brand across the country. A lot of different acquisitions had come to fore, and we were able to make it the Macy's brand and then create our goal then was to create a culture of magic across the country. So unified. So I set out to talk to all our disparate divisions and business units and try to figure out what kind of values should we all use as goals, and created an end-of-year program called Make Magic 6, tied to things like leadership and innovation, 6 different values that everybody agreed to, which is great. So now we had a end-of-year program, a program that we wanted, and we needed to get nominations from people from all over the country. So we needed a platform to make that process really easy. So even though we knew what we wanted to do and how we wanted to celebrate people against different behaviors, we needed to make it really easy to execute. So that's really where we started, and that's what the challenge began as. How do we figure out a way to put that in place and put it as part of our key priorities? So if you go to the next slide, that's where we were able, it was really fortuitous. We were working with Michael, really started with service anniversaries, which is, the heritage of what a lot of people have legacy programs around celebrating milestone. We do it, at that time we were celebrating every 5 years with different gifting events. But again, we wanted now to take it much broader and dive deep into our culture with the idea of appreciation and recognition. So we were able to create this portal, a platform that every single one of our 160,000 plus associates has a customized page that they can access both at work and at home, where they can be celebrated and celebrate others. And it also became the place where they can nominate people for this end-of-year program. So now we had a place where both they could celebrate anniversaries, they could do the end-of-year nominations, and then we started realizing, well, it wasn't really nominations that we wanted. We don't want to call it like just tell us about end of year what somebody did great. We wanted all year round. We wanted everyday magic. So then we really got into storytelling. And that's what you can see on the top right there. These are stories that are submitted every day across the company by the thousands. And they are sometimes a short couple of lines celebrating somebody's great customer engagement, and sometimes they're, as you can see there, a long paragraph with great detail about either something that, some great achievement somebody did above and beyond at work. Really easy to submit it through the site, so everything was very turnkey. But it's one of the great elements that really was the cornerstone of what our culture became. We also have a great set of animated e-cards, and I can't tell you how many people rely on those. We can schedule them in advance so that because we also send out weekly flyers targeted to your specific pyramid, telling you everybody who has an anniversary or a birthday in your vicinity celebrated that week. So you get that top of mind, and then you can quickly jump into an e-card to celebrate them. And we keep refreshing them with new animated and fun ones that are really timely about all kinds of things. We even have multilingual e-cards. So it's become a way where people can really go peer-to-peer, leaders down to associates, and also bottom up in creating this culture of recognition. We also added a suggestion box, a way that folks in our stores could get to have a voice, which is all part of engagement, but we could hear their voice if they had ideas or just things they wanted changed or great ways to solve some of our problems. They could submit it very quickly through the suggestion box. So all that together became our Everyday Magic platform, which continues to evolve and really has been, like the backbone of our engagement. So in the end, what it created, it helped us create this, central core of passion, stimulating passion, because people really did impact our engagement scores. We saw over the course of 3 or 4 years, the scores go up about 8 to 10 points, which is great. And when I say the scores where we measure do you feel valued and do you feel recognized? So we saw a big bump there. And of course, there's a lot of other things going on, but I think I would certainly attribute the Everyday Magic program and strategy to that, to part of that. And because we get 10,000 stories a month generated on that site. We also tied it to our social network Yammer site, so that now people becomes just something that people can chatter about all day long, continuously celebrate the people. We have a whole program tied to magic makers celebrated in the stores and at the director level, district level, and at the regional level. There's lots of layers that we were able to, from a base platform of Everyday Magic, keep building on it so that, again, our culture, so the benefit of it as a way to drive results. So we're very proud of it. I think that's it for now. I'm going to hand it over until I think there's some questions later that I'd be glad to answer any questions that anybody has.
So thanks, Janice. So that's from a retail perspective, and I think Janice, just to put it into context, deals with some at the peak seasons 220,000+ employees, just in terms of the size and scale, logistically when you've got, so respect to Janice for being able to pull and manage that together. So moving and changing industries now into obviously another important area. Zach Lipner, why don't you give us some background and some of your insights, Zach?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. Can you hear me? Just want to make sure that I don't have the right buttons pushed on my phone.
Yep, you're good.
All righty. So, 220,000 employees. I'm not sure I could ever get there. We have about 3,600 here on site, and they're a challenge in and of themselves. When we think about healthcare and what is going on in healthcare and what's been going on in healthcare for what seems like my entire career, we are a changing industry. We are still actually trying to figure out where it is we are actually headed, and that's a challenge for all of us in healthcare as we try to figure that out. But we also have an embedded workforce. So what I mean by an embedded workforce is a group of people who have worked for us for a long time. Hospitals are places where people go and find careers. I don't know whether that still exists in other industries or whether that will exist in our industry, but this particular organization that I've worked for 30 years has a lot of embedded employees. For example, I am getting close to 30 years. I have not cracked the top 200 employees in terms of years of service. And that creates a challenge when you have a fast-moving industry and an embedded workforce. How do you bring them along on a journey where you don't even know where you are going? And then communicate with disparate folks in all different walks of work, because we have everything from plumbers and food service workers and housekeepers to doctors and nurses. How do you communicate with that group? How do you bring them along? How do you make them to be engaged? And when we talk about what engagement is, the definition that I use, which comes from the advisory board, so I have to give them due credit, is it is about getting discretionary effort. We all know that every employee can come to work and you have to hit a base amount of work, or you get found out and you don't last long in organizations. But how do you get that extra amount, that discretionary effort from your employees? And with the challenges that we're faced with in healthcare, in urban healthcare, you clearly can realize how we need to get that discretionary effort from our staff. And how do we communicate the changes and the things that are going on in our organization to keep everybody up to speed along these? And we want to use our recognition programs as a way to do that, to make people interested in what's going on, to buy into what's going on in the organization. Now, when I started in HR 16 years ago, our recognition program was mostly around achievement awards. So it was around things like years of service, perfect attendance, stuff that today one might say, well, you know what? That's what you get paid for showing up yesterday and not for today. Make no mistake about it. These are important events in the work life of an employee, but they don't really change behavior when we provide reward on top of the recognition. So that's an example of places where we can provide recognition and not necessarily provide a reward to it. But where do we want to provide rewards? And I think as I tend to think about where I want to provide rewards, it's in the two things that just came up on the screen, peer recognition and discretionary awards. So as our program evolved, it was really around discretionary awards originally. Let's give managers some budget. Let them give out spot awards. Let them recognize their staff who do great things. And we do that. But what we find when we do that is that the folks who get recognized in the organization are the superstars in the organization. And my guess is they would do it anyway. Yes, we need to give them recognition. Yes, they're entitled to reward because they are great employees. But again, we are not changing the behavior of our employees. And this is where peer-to-peer recognition, I think, really kind of fills that void. Because it is that middle group of employees, the players who show up every day and give you their hearts, their minds, and their souls, who you need to move their level of engagement forward. And peers can do that. When your superstars have the ability to recognize your players, your middle group, then you drive them away from the non-players who bring organizations down. You can catch them in the act at times where managers might not have the opportunity to catch them in the act, and then drive that peer-to-peer recognition as a way to elevate employee recognition. And then as we start to think about this, and we clearly want to recognize those people who do excellent performance as individuals as well as organizational accomplishments, which is what the groups can achieve, we layer that on top and provide ways to recognize excellent employees and groups, and also try to make it a little bit of fun and maybe even put a little chance into this whole idea of recognition. So whether it is the gamification that we do around peer rewards, so if someone gets a peer recognition from another peer, they get a spin on our wheel. No, actually, I think we've changed it to a slot machine. It is rigged, I will tell you that. It is rigged for a certain amount of payoff. Anyone who doesn't think that the slot machines are rigged ought to spend some time in Atlantic City. We are in New Jersey, so we know how that works, and it's all part of the game. But people win things from iPads down to, oh, thank you very much, here's something that's worth about 20 cents. And people can accumulate things for awards. And then we have to celebrate those organizational accomplishments, those things that teams do as well. Our excellence awards are focused at, because our team awards and our excellence awards, we want to give out more than we have available, and our dollars are precious. We tend to throw them in a pot, and then we have a big recognition on-site event, which we actually stream to other areas of the hospital to see who actually gets to win the 56-inch TV this quarter. So by giving people a way to access the recognition event, we come full circle from what we deliver on the destination website, which is our brand called Beth Bucks. We try to brand everything around here, so we brand it as Beth Bucks. We create this destination for recognition. We tell the stories of the winners right over there, and then when it comes, we also display, by the way, I think you can see it on the screen in the top right hand. Go back 1 second, Michael, please. The department scorecard, where we display the results, and then if you hit your results for the quarter, everybody goes in the raffle for the 56-inch TV, the iPad, the massages, the movie tickets, and we get a whole big organizational focus on that when we do that once a quarter. So we can use this destination to drive the peer-to-peer recognition, drive the excellence awards, drive the organizational accomplishments, and then still do the recognition around those achievement awards, such as anniversaries, which I think you see up on the top bar over there. And we believe that all of this is helping us to create the culture that we want to achieve here. We see improvements in our employee engagement scores, and as Janice said, you do a whole bunch of things and there's no science, there's no laboratory to doing this. To some degree, it's an art and a belief that you're headed in the right direction. But when you hear the buzz around the organization about the kinds of things we're doing recognition-wise, and you see the enthusiasm that comes out of the quarterly events that we run, we know we are headed in the direction that we want to head in, which is to improve the engagement of our employees and get more discretionary effort from them at all levels. So that kind of wraps up my focus here. If we can move that over to Leah.
Zach, appreciate the background and perspective from the healthcare side. And so from moving from that type of employee to now a professional service, in this case financial services background, Leah, why don't you share some of your learning and expertise with us? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. So I decided to take you on the TI's journey and where we started as a reward program and where we are at now. So we started our program back in 2009, and the program was really about tax compliance. We had a system to make sure that we were paying the appropriate tax on gift cards and any reward we were giving employees, but that was really it. We didn't really have a program that would engage people, that would encourage them to live our values. And even though it was tied to the values at the time, we did not really do any socialization with the employees, and there was no formal leadership support. So when I started working on the program with my coworkers, we looked at all the data that we had, including employee engagement, and it was probably not where we wanted it to be. And we decided to review the strategy and how we can create more engagement, more motivation, and therefore more increase the morale as we were going through multiple reorganization. And in 2014, we actually rebranded entirely and changed our values. And we really used that opportunity to do a big splash related to our reward and recognition program. And we used the program as a way for to allow our employees to recognize their peer for living our new values and exhibited the appropriate and desired behavior. And we also use the system to implement reward program at the business area level, which gives them flexibility to manage points to ensure that the business outcome were met. So we had some areas, for instance, where it's more metric-driven with scorecards, and they were able to customize a little bit their program and make sure that the program was appropriate based on their needs. So we now have that kind of corporate program that is more peer-to-peer recognition, non-monetary. As I was saying, peer-to-peer, bottom-up or top-down. Our CEO was very involved as we were launching our new values and the new phase of the program. He gave away awards. He mentioned it in every town hall, and I think that actually made quite a big difference. If you want to go to the next slide, Michael, please. So we also added a lot of new features into our program to make it more interactive, fun, friendly, dynamic. So now employees can really just one click send a values All-Star e-card. As you can see here, same as my counterpart at Macy's and Beth Israel, we have public recognition where employees can see who has been recognized. And we also integrated those recognition into our intranet. So anyone connecting in the morning to the intranet would see who has been recognized in the last 10, 15, 20 minutes. We are also working to develop more of the social aspects. So we added likes and the ability to comment on recognition, and right now we're exploring some options to link to our social collaboration tool, and we also are using Yammer. It's called TIA Chats. So we added all those different features, and I think that was a turnout for the program. If you want to go to the next slide, Michael, please. We quadrupled the usage of the program, and I think when we started, the recognition reach was about 20%, and now we're close to 80%. So it worked out pretty well for us, and I think now we are in a pretty good spot where our reward and recognition program is really embedded in all of our practices, is leveraged in all of our corporate initiatives. You see here one of our e-cards to celebrate inclusion. There's a huge focus, and still is a huge focus in our company around diversity and inclusion. And so we created new e-cards and the tool for employees to recognize that. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So I think the overall objective of our program is still to build engagement, create motivation, and increase morale. And the initial idea was to create that culture of recognition, to create that culture where it's just part of your day-to-day basis, where you get up in the morning, log into your computer, and you want to recognize someone, say thank you, as Janice was saying earlier. So it's really creating the habit of recognizing people, saying thank you, acknowledging their contribution and valued work. So there's still a lot that we can do, but I think there was we went through different phases, and now we've reached a place where we, as I was saying, our usage is pretty good, but there is still a lot to be done. One thing I would just add is, as I was saying, a lot to be done. We need to, one of the challenges that we faced over the year was to keep the momentum going. And I was saying earlier, we've introduced multiple new features, new ways to engage people. And one of them is something we are constantly exploring is gamification. And we really believe that through fun games, and that was mentioning some of them, it really helped people kind of take the edge off, be able to connect with one another. So that's also another thing that we are using the program and tool system for. We using especially gamification, I would want to add around our health and wellness program. We have a very robust program now where people, by completing health challenges or doing some health steps related to their health, can gain rewards and recognition points up to 6,000, which in our scale would mean about $300 for the calendar year. So the program is really leveraged also to encourage employees to be more healthy and feeling better in their day-to-day life.
All right. Well, thanks, Leah. So I'm going to prompt a few questions to the panel members. I'll pose this one probably to you, Janice, in lieu of your large population. You certainly would be dealing with this. What do you think is the role of recognition in terms of driving business outcomes, considering we've got, generational workforce from, 17, 18 years old now all the way through to 65 plus, and all of their different needs? What's your perspective of that?
You have to evolve and you have to adapt and be where people are. So access to, if you have an online site, is critical to everyone. And for younger folks that might be mobile, we're still a little shy in our culture to encourage people to bring phones to work, but that's why we allow recognition to happen even at home, as long as it's to their benefit and all. But it's making sure we're where they are and making sure that there is social interaction and having it part of a bigger culture that isn't just about the platform, but is also about things, what you are setting in motion, which is this appreciation of each other. We've been challenged, certainly in economic times, to make our budget go as far as we can. And what we have learned along the way is that while rewards are nice, as you said, and we talked about, gamification in the past, and it's always nice to win something, really the public and peer-to-peer recognition of somebody goes way farther than almost anything else. So even a simple certificate, because somebody's celebrated for a story that's been told and that they maybe have been chosen in their store as the best magic maker of the month, that public call, in a rally, if people are celebrated by their leaders, that goes a really long way. And so that allows us to stretch our budget across, all people and all generations. And even reach people, for instance, we have found over the years, and it's so quick in the last 5 years even, how technology has evolved and how adaptation of technology. So even the folks we have a lot of people who've been around for 30, 40 years, they are much more comfortable with using, they have to use their POS, many, in the stores, so they're comfortable with technology, and we haven't, over time, that has been less and less of a barrier. So it's just thinking, though, about where people are and making sure to meet them there with a full, I think, a very multifaceted program that even in stores right now, including in addition to what we do with our platform, we still have handwritten cards that people can give to each other to celebrate them and thank them as well. So not forget the analog, make sure you're keeping up with the technology, and always evolving, I think, is really important.
All right, well, thanks. That's a great response. Zach, did you want to add anything to that from your perspective, given you've also got, 35-year tenured employees all the way down to, young nurses coming straight out of school? Do you notice they're interacting with recognition in a different way, or they all like recognition?
I would say that everyone likes recognition. There's certainly those folks who think that their hand needs to be out for everything or have their hands out for everything. There has to be a reality in organizations, especially considering economic circumstances, where you just can't do that. So you have to decide organizationally, managerially, and in concert with the workforce, and I've done this in concert with the workforce, where do we want to put our recognition and where do we want to put our rewards? Because these are scarce budgets that need to be spread out and need to be used. So if we give discretionary budgets to managers, how do we check to make sure they're actually using them, for example, is another challenge that sits out there. And maybe it's a generational challenge. Maybe it's that leaders who have been more seasoned in the organization see less value of it. People who are more tech savvy, who are more on their phones and able to use the kind of technology that we use to deliver our recognition programs are better at it, more comfortable with it, and doing it more frequently. So maybe there's a layer that we ought to look at over there as well.
All right. Well, thanks, Zach. So on to another question or angle perspective. If you think into the future, and I don't mean, what are the plans for the next 3, 6, 9 months, but where does this grow and evolve? Leah, given that you've already in a path of evolution in the time, together and now the wellness, but if I said, where does it look like to you? What's the role of recognition in the future in the organization? Is this a fad, a phase? Is this, no, this is part of the inherent culture of organizations now.
Yeah, I think as Janice was saying actually earlier, we're going to have to keep being adaptable to new generations that are coming. Us to have a pretty big span of employee between long tenure employee and younger one who have just started working. So our company is also going through growth at the global scale. So that's going to be something interesting on how we can keep and manage our culture as a company and as a parent company for all of our subsidiaries across the globe. So it's going to be, I think, challenging, but it's going to bring a lot of opportunities as well. It's going to be important, as I was saying, to stay on top of what we want to achieve with the program, how we want the employee engaged, and the type of culture we want to develop, but also be able to stay up to speed with technology and social media, mobile access, which we do have right now. We do have an interface for mobile, but we do not have an app that would be even easier to use. So I think it's where we're going. We also be looking at more integration in some of our processes, like for instance, performance review, feedback. It's already happening. There are some employees during performance review who are using all the different e-cards, peer-to-peer recognition that they have received to show their work. And I think that's something that we really believe in and that we want to develop forward.
A great comment to add. Thank you for sharing that. So, Janice, in lieu of your generational workforce, how do you see managing recognition from, issues of 65 plus year down to, the newbies coming up, and how are you handling that? Do you need to design different recognition mechanisms for them, or no, it looks from the outside like the generations are that different, but they're not actually, or not from a perspective of how to manage recognition with them?
It really, I don't think it is that different. I think people like to have a menu of tools that they can use, because at any one point in the day it might be more fun to pat somebody on the shoulder, send them an email, or write a story about them, or hand them a thank you card. So I think everybody, no matter how old you are, may have a different habit that they want to do at different times during the day. But so flexibility is important. And I just think it is, what the Everyday Magic platform does for us, though, is just give a baseline of what we want our culture to be. The expectation that we want leaders to be celebrating everybody publicly in rallies. So this gives them the way and the space and the reason to celebrate them. It also encourages people just to remember when somebody's birthday is. So, for instance, right now, tonight, because of what we send out, these weekly mailers, it's very top of mind. We're going to happy hour tonight to celebrate 2 birthdays in my little department. And those are millennial birthdays, by the way. And I think if they were baby boomer birthdays, we'd be doing exactly the same thing. But that moment and that recognition celebration was triggered by the fact that that everybody gets an email reminder tied to the Everyday Magic site about the birthdays and anniversaries in our area. So having a lot of tools, being very flexible, and just setting that standard of culture, I think, is really important.
All right, thank you. So one final question, then I'll sort of do a bit of a summary, but to the ultimate questions, which we're always faced with HR, maybe especially, but particularly as it relates to, does investment in recognition influence business outcomes? And I'd pass it to any of you who feel like they would like to, respond or make a comment, which is, if pressed to, do you think this is impacting the business results? Obviously, we know all companies are affected by a lot more than the recognition, but is it having influence? Anybody want to comment on that?
Sure. Let me see if I can take that one, Michael. We have the age-old question, which is, does employee satisfaction lead to customer satisfaction? When we satisfy our employees, does that then make them better able, capable, more willing to satisfy our customers? I got to tell you, I've gone back and forth on this over the years. But one thing I know, and that is that if you don't do recognition, your expectation for having good business outcomes is flawed. whether we believe that customer recognition, that employee recognition feeds customer satisfaction, or customer satisfaction feeds employee engagement. And I believe that there's a certain degree of that goes on as well, because when you have happy customers, you'll have happier employees. The problem is, if you don't start with a culture of recognition, where are you going? Where are you going?
That's a good point. Janice or Leah, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll just add that. Sorry.
You go, Leah.
Okay, thank you. I agree. I think it's actually pretty difficult to quantify the impact of recognition in the workplace. But what I can say is that did see slight improvement in our engagement survey as we were relaunching our values and as we were relaunching the entire program. Of course, there are other programs across the company that helped with that, but I think it's the reward and recognition program was a part of that. And there's an intrinsic relationship between recognition, motivation, productivity, and performance. I mean, anyone who's receiving any sort of recognition for their contribution, they feel valued and more respected in their work, and therefore I think they have a huge impact on morale and motivation and so performance in the end.
Yeah, I agree with both Zach and me, and I would just add, reinforce what they're saying. We're all at Macy's, it's all about customer service and customer interactions, and you just know if you have an associate that you see, a sales associate that's smiling, you're going to have and it feels good and is happy. I mean, it's that basic. Then your experience, no matter what you go through with purchasing whatever you're going to buy at Macy's, is going to be that much better. And that's what we're aiming for. So we know that when somebody feels recognized and has been celebrated by a peer or by somebody, they're going to be smiling. So it is, it's that really direct to how you make, happy associates. As I think Zach said, happy associates is happy customers. Same thing.
All right. Thanks, Janice. So I want to give a little perspective on maybe some explanation and some examples, having now heard from some industry leaders on their executions and their backgrounds, perspectives, and ability to sort of quantify. One, why is this happening and why in recognition is sort of seen to rise to the surface? I think there's a few things that are happening in our world that is making this more important. Okay, so the first is back to the Maslow days. Everybody remember Maslow? Well, the basic levels of the Maslow said you've got to be safe, you've got to be able to sort of feed yourself, you've got to have protection. Well, none of that's really relevant to the psychology of an American workforce, or at least gainfully employed population. What's the next sort of levels? Well, the next level is self-esteem, and I think that's the essence of what we're talking about in recognition. And if you consider what the real motivators are for all the things we do, because none of us went to work driving this morning for the money, per se. It's relevant. We need it. We want more, all of it, for sure. At the end of the year, we'd like a raise. We'd like some more next year. But we kind of all are on our little journeys and on our various paths. And some of are on the 75 path and some of the 85 path and some 125 path. But what's common across all of us is self-esteem. And the whole concept of, well, how do we tap into that power and energy of self-esteem? Well, we're saying recognition seems to be the door opener to that, because it's stroking the self-esteem of the individual, and the recognition vehicles are there. Let's consider for a moment what is probably arguably the biggest global brand and greatest success story of our time is going to be Facebook. How many ads have you seen for Facebook? None. Zero. Not one. But everybody uses it, and everybody's into it. Why? Because it's somehow allowing for self-esteem in a bidirectional relationship. And if you think about the recognition programs and peer-to-peer, they're not that dissimilar. If you do it really well, what can you do? Well, you can build a huge company that sells a very simplistic product that's really not innovative at all, and have this wonderful customer experience, because there's a great culture inside that organization, and it comes obviously from the leader. We built the Starbucks brand with our people first, not our consumers. Go to Starbucks, we know what the experience is. Nothing wrong with the product. It's a fine product. But that experience drives us back, and as a result, there's a big margin. What's lots of companies done? Yes, they would say to all the things we've talked about, so much so that we've got department incentives, we have our holiday parties, we've got our awards catalogs, we've got our walking program, we've got our sales incentives, we've got our biannual awards, we've got our award dinner, we've got our wellness programs, we've got our manager spot awards. Oh my God, we've killed them. Like, are you serious? Where's the handbook? All right, too much. Now, of course, all those programs were generally created over time. Somebody did something in 73, another one in 78, 84, 96, 99, 2012, 2014. If you were to redo them all, would they all look like they currently do, or would you align them? And didn't you hear, interesting, Leah's comments about how they're combining things? Actually, Zach and Janice, too, started with the service anniversary, used to recognize for the attendance. Now we're beginning to combine these things. Why? Because employees want it really simple and easy. They're being bombarded with communications. Everybody wants them to focus on whatever it is they want to do. So when it comes to volunteer programs, recognition, anniversary, safety, education, diversity, ideation, employee referrals, department incentives, make them all work together collaboratively, send a common message, make it easy for them to do it. Some golden rules. I won't get to go into the details. 1, find leadership support. We need their power. It needs to come from the top. The difference in the outcomes can be anywhere from as great as 20 to 30%. Just to have a big leader get behind it. 2, think about how it aligns with the company's goals and objectives. All right? So that we can immediately get leadership involvement, convincing leadership that this aligns with what they're trying to do, and it's a vehicle. Reduce the number of programs if necessary, but make sure they're integrated. Wellness sends a message, recognition sends a message, tenure sends a message, safety sends a message, incentive sends a message. Make sure they're working in a common framework so that together they are producing a cumulative message to the employee. Not 8 separate messages, because there are 9 different committees with 23 different people all wanting to do their own thing and have their stamp. Get internal communications behind it. The programs need to be kept alive. Have somebody who wants to see the program's success as part of a KPI. Somebody needs to want to see the program succeed. Again, it can make as big a difference as having an integrated leader or a leader. Having multiple program formats, to Janice's point. It's not all like it's an app. No, it's a website or it's printed cards. No, it's got all those forms, and obviously it has some kind of technology infrastructure. And either find good resources internally, and if you can go to IT, some of them might have expertise, or go find a vendor that knows what they're doing. All right? The returns can be significant. So it's not about sort of just the gift or the reward, just as Janice and Leah had said. If you do it really well, here's a case study client where it was the second best benefit behind flexible work schedules, the second best benefit. Okay, that shows you how significant it can be. Align them, and like Richard Branson says, train people well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't, and you'll get the best you can out of your folks. So we wanted to have more time for questions. I'll leave that to Holly in terms of whether we've really got time for it. If we do, fantastic. If not, I appreciate everybody's time, and especially for the panelists, Leah, Janice, and Zach, for taking time today. Over to you, Holly.
Thank you, everyone, our party of 4, for such a wonderful presentation today and really cool use of video. Really great way to add to that webcast. And with the time we have remaining, I believe we can get to one question, so I'll take the first one that came in today. This is from Scott, and this question is not meant for anyone in particular, so whoever wants to take the reins, please feel free and do so. Scott says, any ideas about how to bridge a hybrid population of blue-collar workers with minimal online access and admin staff with frequent online access?
I mean, certainly I'll grab that for a second, and at Macy's, we certainly have that in that we have a whole logistical all our logistical folks in our distribution centers, in addition to all the people in the stores, and a significant executive population. So you still, as I said, you can have some of the analog items, and that's really important, and potluck dinners and all of that. But I do think that there's a way to do a platform, and you have to find terminals. I mean, at work right now, we encourage and we allow all our associates to find some kiosk, an employment kiosk, a training terminal, a computer that they do have access to. And you have to make it part of our culture, as we have, that you are permitted, in fact encouraged, to go and visit because you want to celebrate someone else. So you can, find it in your budget and to create those go-to spaces, destination computers for people to use. I would also say in our stores we've allowed, our managers now have iPads, kind of, to walk around with. They have portable computing devices that can help them. Even some of the associates who don't have access to that can borrow or use sometimes some of the manager tablets. But you have to invest, and you have to build that computer space where people can go to, and then they really appreciate it.
Yeah, I would agree with you that, making computer access available, but there's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in here that I think we have to be careful of, which is that when we assume that lower-level employees don't use technology. I remember 16 years ago when we put in online applications. How are people going to apply for housekeeping jobs? You know what? They do, and we hire them. Everybody has a phone. If you make it easy enough and make it a destination, everyone in your organization will figure out how to get there.
All right, and would anyone like to add to that?
I will say that we have a population, just briefly as a reference, in a client food service business, very low level, very low pay, 89% utilization of personal smartphone devices. So it's what the carriers are selling. So granted, we all got to recognize there's not everybody's there, but the applications can be pretty simplistic, and the data from that food service company sort of says to us, like per Zach's comment, they can get there. They can get there. But you might design it with that specific population in mind and let it grow and evolve in sophistication over time.
All right, thanks so much, Michael, for closing us out. And we have reached the bottom of the hour, and in fact, we're moving into the next one. And so we'll go ahead and end things for the day. And thank you once again to everyone at Online Rewards, and as well as our audience members who took time out of their days to hang out for a bit. And from all of us here at HCI, thank you for joining us. We hope everyone has a wonderful day.